We're glad you've decided to try your hand at wallpapering. It's a great way to personalize a room, and the finished job will be something you'll take pride in for years. Many people think wallpapering is too difficult for amateurs, but that's not true. All it takes is care, patience, and good organization. We'll go over everything you need, and we'll go through each part of the process step by step. Before we start, a few words of advice. First, watch the whole program before you run out to buy your paper and tools. It'll give you an idea of the scope of the project, make you familiar with the terminology, and help you plan properly. Also, because you're watching this on video cassette, you can review any section anytime. We've separated the program into chapters, so when there's something you need to review, it should be easy to find and replay. Although our chief goal is to teach you about hanging wallpaper, let's take a moment to talk about choosing wallpaper. There are many different kinds of wall coverings, and they're available in an amazing number of colors, patterns, and materials. When you're looking at a small sample, it's difficult to imagine how the room will look when it's papered. To make selecting easier, look at some home decorating magazines or books before you go searching. You'll find more about specific kinds of coverings and their uses in the Wall Covering Handbook that comes with this cassette. If your VCR has a counter, zero it here. There are counter numbers listed in the handbook which will help you to find specific chapters. When planning your project, one of the first things you should find out is exactly how many rolls of paper do you need. The procedure for calculating this is very simple. You just measure the room to figure out the total square footage of the walls and subtract footage for doors and windows. You need a tape measure, pad, and pencil. We've chosen a dining room to work on, but the techniques apply to any room. Let's join our professional paper hanger, Lee Torrenti.
As you can see, the height is about 8 feet, which is average for the US. Basically, it has all the features you'll find in most rooms. Doors, windows, plaster wall, baseboards, and electrical outlets. The first step is to determine how much wall area you have. So let's measure the room to figure out the total square footage of the walls. The only thing you'll need for this first step is a tape measure and a notepad.
To calculate the square footage, we have to multiply the distance around the room by the height of the walls. So here we have 2 walls that are 12 feet long and 2 that are 16, for a total of 56. Now we have to multiply 56 by the height, which is 8.5, for a total of 476 square feet. To find out how many rolls we need, we divide by 30, which is the number of square feet covered by an average roll of wallpaper. That gives us 15.8, which we'll round off to 16.
Now that we have the measurements of the room, let's subtract footage for openings such as doors and windows. As a good rule of thumb, subtract half a roll for each opening. In a large doorway like this, count it as 2 doors, and therefore subtract the full roll.
Now we know how much wallpaper we need, but wait, don't rush off to the store just yet. Our next step is to examine the condition of the walls to determine what problems have to be corrected. Then we'll show you all the tools and materials you'll need to fix the problems and to hang the wallpaper.
I can't emphasize enough how important it is to have good preparation on your walls. As you can see, there's some hairline cracks and small nail holes. Also, just in general, small imperfections throughout the wall, slight texture as well. It's generally good to sand your walls down and get rid of these small little bumps that might filter through after the wallpaper is up. Now let's go to the store where we'll pick up the tools and the materials that we need to fix these problems and to hang the wallpaper.
In the wall covering handbook that accompanies this program, you'll find a list of the tools and materials we'll be going over here. Take it with you when you go shopping to use as a checklist. Wallpaper hanging tools are often packaged in kits, but they don't all contain the same equipment, so we'll cover each item individually. If you find a kit that you like, you can compare it with our list and add the extra items you need.
Okay, I've separated the tools into categories to make it less confusing, and I just want to quickly just go over them And of course we have the tape measure that we're going to use for measuring wall space and also measuring the wallpaper itself. Some of these things you may already have at your home. The hammer for removing the nails from walls, screwdriver for taking off the switch plates and electrical outlets, and broad knife for broad knifing the walls and also using it as a guide for cutting, as I'll be showing you, and a spackling knife, which I'll also be using for prepping the walls. Regular drop cloth to put on the floor, spackling compound to use on cracks and any holes. This is ready mix spackle as opposed to powder spackles, which you have to mix with water. And also sandpaper. You can pretty much use any brand of sandpaper. You want to get from medium to fine. That's most likely what you'll be using. Now we're on the category of priming the walls and what kind of primer to use and so forth. I prefer to use this primer if there's paint on the walls already. It's water soluble and it'll do the trick. It'll promote adhesion. This is an oil-based primer sealer, which is for new walls, because if you try to use a synthetic primer, the sheets will come off. The way we use these primers is exactly like painting. You just pour it in the pan, you put your roller sleeve on your roller, and just roll it on the walls nice and neatly and evenly, and then brush around the ceiling line, around the moldings, and so forth. Okay, now let's talk about adhesive paste and what kind of paste we use with different kinds of wall coverings and wallpapers. With the paper, we use wheat paste. Some paper, if the manufacturer or the instruction sheet inside the rolls read that you should use a cellulose, which is also mixed with water, same as wheat paste, then you should go along with that recommendation because they make that paper and they recommend it. Now, what I'd like to do is talk about pre-pasted paper, which already comes with its own adhesive. And pre-pasted paper, you use a water box where you fill it up with water and you cut your sheets and you dip it in the water, and I'll be showing you how to do that when we get back. I want to move on and see exactly what types of tools we need to hang the wallpaper. And the first thing that we need is a level. And the level is essential because this is what is going to make each and every panel, each and every sheet straight. And I'll be showing you exactly how to use this level when we begin our room. Razor blades, very important. This is a box that has 100 razor blades. You're going to be using a lot of razor blades because they dull very easily. And I also want to show you the blade holder. This is a very, very good little tool to have because particularly if you're not used to cutting and holding a razor blade just by itself. And what you do is just insert the blade there into the little slot there, and then you can just use the handle to cut. And it makes cutting a lot easier. And this is a magnetic blade holder that you can clip to your shirt or your belt. So that's a good little thing to have. And this seam roller, this is called a seam roller, and we're going to be using this to tighten up our seams every time we put up each panel. We want to tighten up each seam of that panel. And now our sweep to smooth out bubbles and to just smooth out our panels when we're hanging each sheet. We want to smooth out with a sweep. And then to polish up your sheet, you may want to use a plastic smoother. These are great, particularly for getting the inside corner, as I'll be showing you later on, and also just smoothing right up to the ceiling line and just generally straightening out your panel and to a finished product. And these are called trestles, and they're just like carpenter horses, except they're lighter and they're portable. As you can see, they fold up, and I'm going to be showing you how they open up and how I can set them up later on. And of course they come along with boards which you can pick up in a regular lumber yard, and the boards go on top of the trestles, which is where we're going to put our paper on and use as a table. And I have a straight edge, which I'm also going to be using for cutting the paper. Generally, I like to use 2 sponges to just wipe and clean as I go along, and particularly to clean my sheets as I'm hanging them. And also, I like to work with 2 buckets, just like this. They will hold about 2 gallons of paste or water. And now that we have all the tools that we need and all the materials that we need, let's go and hang the wallpaper.
As we've said, the condition of the wall surface is very important to the success of any papering project. No matter how carefully you hang the paper, all your hard work can be undone by working with a surface that has not been properly prepared and primed. The tools and materials we'll need for this are a hammer, screwdriver, putty knife, broad knife, spackling compound, sandpaper, primer, roller, pan, and paintbrush. First, remove all nails and hooks from the walls and any loose material from the cracks. Fill all the cracks and nail holes with spackling compound, and then sand them down until they're even with the rest of the wall. If a crack is very small, it's a good idea to open it up a little with a putty knife so that the spackle can penetrate into the crack and bond properly with the wall. Remove all switch and receptacle plates. So that you don't lose the screws, screw them back into the outlets until you're ready to replace the covers. Also, you'll be working with water and metal tools, so for safety's sake, turn off the electrical power to the room.
Here's another crack that should be opened up a little bit. It's just enough to fill it in comfortably. Doesn't matter where you start, just as long as you continue to open it up wherever it leads. I prefer to just fill it in roughly first. Just make sure that it's cover as much area as possible quickly. Just try and get all your excess off so it makes sanding a lot easier. The spackle will dry approximately about 45 minutes. If you're in a hurry and you want it to dry as quick as possible, a hair dryer is really good. Even a clip light. See, now I can go over it, smooth it out. I always use sandpaper for just smoothing out walls for papering. I tend not to use electric sanders because that's really for a different type of job. If you're going to do glazing or really high-tech painting and you want a wall to look extremely, extremely smooth, you would use an electric sander. For this, it would just defeat the purpose, create a tremendous amount of dust. And as you can see, I'm doing it very lightly, no big mess. Okay, this is pretty dry, so just going to sand the edges a little bit. And sometimes when you put up spackle, you'll see tiny little holes, which is no big deal, but you want to sand them down a little bit. Very lightly around the edges, mainly just to cut those edges off. Edges are very smooth, little holes are gone, and we're ready to go. We're ready to prime that area. There are 2 kinds of primers. One which is an oil-based primer, sealer, and this, which is a synthetic primer, water-based. You can wash your roller and brush after you're done with it in water. An oil-based primer, generally used for new walls. And this, which is a synthetic, is used for walls that have been painted before. This primer will seal the area, seal the walls, and it will promote adhesion when hanging the wallpaper. It takes approximately about half an hour to dry, and then you are ready to hang, as opposed to an oil-based primer sealer, which takes 3 or 4 hours to dry. Generally, when I'm rolling primer on the wall, I try to get as close to the ceiling as possible, but not too close, so I don't run the risk of priming the ceiling or touching it with the primer. And then, if I want to get really close to the very edge of the ceiling line, paintbrush comes in very handy.
Now we have to choose the place where we'll start papering and the spot where we'll end, what professional hangers call the kill point or mismatch. At the kill point, patterns won't match up. So you want to plan for this to happen where it will be all but unnoticeable, typically behind a door or in an inconspicuous corner. To figure out where the sheets will fall, you can use a roll of wallpaper as your measuring tool.
Okay, let's talk about the engineering of the room, which is exactly where we're going to begin and where we're going to end. This is the main wall that you see when you first walk in. Generally speaking, I'd like to start right in the middle of the wall and work my way around the room to wherever I decide I want to end. I've already measured to find out where my middle is. Just take the roll itself, and you can sort of plan where your sheets are going to fall if you start in the middle. You know that it will be approximately here, the first sheet, then the second sheet, then the third
It's important to know approximately where each strip will hang. By shifting your starting point slightly, you can avoid situations where you might have to cut away large sections of your panels when cutting around openings. You'll see what we mean when Lee papers around these windows. The next step is to draw a perfectly vertical line, what's known as a plumb line, at your starting point. You might be tempted to start at a door, a window, or a corner, but these are almost never truly vertical. If you rely on one of them to hang the first strip, you'll find that as you hang more and more, your pattern will become more and more askew. While some paperers use a plumb bob, Lee will show you how to make this line using a level and a pencil.
What I'm going to do here is draw a level line. That's where my mark is for the middle. So you just simply put the level up to where your mark is, which is half of the wall. Make sure that the bubble is smack in the middle, in between these two little marks here the level has. And you're ready to draw your line. Again, make sure you're following your line. Make sure that that bubble is smack in the middle there, right in between those two little marks. And follow your line again, all the way down.
Now we have to prepare the paper for hanging. This involves cutting strips to the proper length, dipping them into water to activate the adhesive backing, and folding them so that they're easy to handle. You'll need a tape measure, razor, straight edge, and water box. If you've chosen a wall covering that is not pre-pasted, then instead of soaking it, you'll need to apply an adhesive using a roller or a brush.
Before you open and cut the rolls, it's important to check lot numbers to make sure that all the rolls come from the same lot. Although modern technology in printing allows very close matches, batch after batch, they are rarely exactly the same, and one roll from another die lot would probably show up when it's hung among others. As you can see, this is the run number, number 2, which is the same. Run number is the same as a lot number, and it's number 2. This one is also number 2, and this one is also number 2, so we know that they're all the same. Okay, now I'm going to check this roll for any imperfections. It's very important to always open up your rolls before you begin hanging. Just unroll it all the way through and check to see if there are any misprints or anything of that kind. And do that with every roll before you begin. Now let me check my height. And that's about 8.5 feet. We'll make that 9 feet, which gives us about 3 inches top and bottom. And a good way to measure your first sheet is to just measure the table and use the table as a measuring tool. The table is 5 feet across, and then another 4 feet would be 9 feet. So I'll make a little mark there, and I know that that's the length of what my sheets are going to be. So that's 5 feet once. And another 4 feet up to our little mark. I'm going to put my straight edge right on it. And this is a good way to cut, by the way. That's where you want to cut. You can either cut it like this. I prefer to turn the roll like this, which kind of straightens it better. And now I can use my blade, single edge blade, and you can see how easy it goes. Just take your time and do it nice and easy. And that's my first sheet. Now, most trestles have these little brackets here where you can put your straight edge right across like that for when you're going to use it again. And now I'm going to cut the second sheet. And this happens to be a straight across match. And let me quickly show you. The pattern repeats straight across the panel. There's green there, there's green here, there's green, green, green. The little leaf repeats. So you essentially duplicate the sheets. You can get about 3 sheets per double roll. So it's really rather simple if you just follow procedure. Just have to keep duplicating them. This one matches here again. It's the same length. You can always make it a little longer. Just make sure you don't make it a little shorter. And we have what it's called an end of a roll. And this you can use, always save everything. They come in handy for wrapping switchblades, if you want them covered, or even for what we call headers, which is places above windows and doors or below windows. And usually it's good to save just about every strip in the event you need them. And now we're ready for pasting the sheets and putting them up. What I'm going to do is roll them this way, the pattern in. So when I put them in the water box, the paste is going to get activated quickly as opposed to rolling them the other way. Make sure the water covers the sheet. Don't get any dry spots. And now when you pull them out, make sure that you pull them out slowly so the water has a chance to get to it. And you might want to just pull out a little bit and soak this again, just like that, out of the sheet going up. Just put it over the table like this. And you can check for dry spots if the water didn't get to it. Sometimes you can just take a sponge, a wet sponge, and just sprinkle a little water on it, and that usually does it. And I'm going to pull it up on the table a little bit more for my long fold. Again, my long fold is the largest fold of the sheet, which is the top. And just push it. It slides. When it's wet, it's easy to slide over. Make sure that you have it edge to edge so the adhesive, the paste, doesn't dry out. And you want to have a long fold on what's going to be the top section of the sheet, because it makes it easier when you're up on the ladder to take that top fold, that longer fold, and open it up and level it. You're working with a larger section of that sheet. And once you get it level and you smooth it out, you've covered a large section of the sheet. And then you have a smaller fold on the bottom. Once you get off the ladder, that's easy to deal with because it takes approximately about 3 or 4 minutes for each sheet to stretch out and activate the paste and all that from the water. I'm just going to fold it neatly into the middle of the sheet. And I'm going to do the same with my top fold. So essentially all I'm saying is that just roll it in like this towards the middle of the sheet, which makes it very easy to carry from the table to the ladder.
Now comes the moment of truth when you hang the first strip and make sure that it's perfectly straight. We'll need our smoothers, razor, broad knife, seam roller, sponge, and bucket of water. Because wall covering adhesives are formulated to let you slip the paper around a bit after it's on the wall, you don't have to worry about placing it exactly against the line right away. Watch Lee and see how he maneuvers the sheet into position.
Okay, generally it's good to be right in front of where your seam is going to be, right where your level line is. As you can see, it's easy to unfold. You can pick up the corners, hold them with your fingers like this, have control over the sheet. And if you like, you can do two things. You can either lower it to the floor while you're unfolding it, or you can simply just hold the bottom part of the sheet with your foot and just let it fall down. Or you can just let it fall down and then pull it up. Either way, it'll work. And as you can see, I have control of the sheet by doing it like this. Also, it's wet, so it's slippery. You can move it around. If it's not exactly on the plumb line, you can just shift it over a little bit. So there's a little bit of time. You don't have to despair or get crazy about it. And it's right on the level line, as you can see. Now, plastic smoother is a good thing for this because you can crease where you're going to be cutting your ceiling line. On a pattern like this, that's a good ceiling line. You're not really cutting the little flower or the design. You're going to have it ride the ceiling line as much as possible, depending upon how out the ceiling line is, how level or not level it is. So that's about right. And there might be a few little bubbles at first. That, as the sheet starts drying out, that will disappear. Or you can go over it again around the seam areas. Sometimes a little adhesive will come out of the area. In this case, it doesn't really matter because it's going onto the wall. But as we begin hanging, it's important to wipe as you go along, to wipe the seam area, to wipe the entire sheet and sheets as you go along to keep it very neat and clean. The adhesive on pre-pasted paper has a tendency to dry a little shiny if there's any left on the surface of the paper. So you want to constantly be wiping off whatever adhesive comes from the sheet itself, from the adhesive behind the sheet. Okay, now I'm going to take our blade holder and I'm going to use broad knife as a guide. This is really great to use. It'll give you a great cut. And just take your time cutting again. You're not under any time pressure. You can just take your time and it will come out right. And now you can just simply remove this. And as you can see, the importance of the long fold is now you have covered all that area in one shot. You were up on the ladder, You unfolded the sheet. You got all that accomplished just from being up on the ladder just one time only. You cut it. It's straight. It's level. Now you can move the ladder out of the way a little bit, and you get to your bottom fold, which is smaller fold. And it will come approximately a little bit below where you're going to be cutting, which is good. And again, you want to smooth out your sheet. Make sure that it's following your plumb line, level line. I prefer to go over it with the plastic smoother just to make sure that all the air bubbles are out and that you have a nice tight fit there on the wall. Make sure that it's just very tight on the wall. I'm going to cut with the broad knife and the blade holder with a blade in it, where I showed you before. Make sure it's right on the edge. It'll give you a nice clean edge. One thing that's very important when you're cutting paper is that you should really replace the blade as often as possible. If you have a dull blade, it will just rip the paper. It won't cut it. Now, what I'd like to do is seam roll each side of the strip, because that's where my next piece is going to go. We're going to have a butt fit, one panel to the next, butting to this sheet. And we want it to be very tight. We want this seam to be very tight and flat on the wall. I'm just going to roll top and bottom. And that's good. Sometimes if you have a little blemish or a little something that might stick up, that might stick through the paper that you forgot to get to, or even just from the water from the tray, it happens. All you have to do is just take the back of your seam roller and just bang it in a little bit, because it's just a little powder or something that got there, and you can just pretty much flatten it out. And also, wipe your sealing line. The adhesive also will dry, and you'll see a difference on your sealing line. You'll see a small shadow or something you don't want. So you want to basically just keep everything nice and neat, finish one thing, and then get to the next thing. And again, you can shift it any way you want to. If you want to take a rest, you can just simply stick it to the wall, and now you can kind of position yourself better. And you want to try and follow your pattern. You can bring it up a little bit. Same way we matched it before. These little things repeating. Just about so. And then you can bring it in just a little bit to, let's do a little smoothing again. You can always keep shifting until you have that seam that you want. You want to try and get a butt seam, which means edge and edge together. Now, you can use your smoother again to kind of make it a little tighter now that you know that it's straight and it's meeting your other panel here. And let me just demonstrate how you can just, if you have a little bit too much excess, you can just simply get rid of it like that before you make your final cut. Or you can just bring it over to you. Just pull it back. So now you can see the line better. Push it in with your hands so you can get a nice butt seam. There's an outlet here on the wall. Now before you even approach hanging, just turn off the power. This way you don't have to worry about it. And pretty much you can feel where you need to cut. And if you want to take a better look, just lift up your paper. And you can put your finger there. Just make a little slice. And look in, just to give you an idea where your next cut is going to be. And that's pretty good.
Doors, windows, fireplaces, bookcases, and other interruptions in the surface of a wall pose some special problems. You can be all but certain that they aren't perfectly vertical, and their top and bottom edges probably aren't perfectly level either. Instead of trying to measure, cut, and fit odd-shaped pieces, we'll paper right up to openings and trim away the excess paper.
Here's what we call a header. This is very typical to have a space like this over the window where you could use the end of a roll for the piece needed. And just take the end of the roll and just take it up and match it. And you can either make a little mark right there with your pencil where you're going to cut, giving it plenty of length, and take it down, cut it, wet it, let it stretch, and up it goes. Okay, for a small piece like this, just fold it in half because it's very, very small, and unfold it, put it up, same way as we do the large strips. Just kind of slide it in there. Butt your seam against the last sheet and use your sweep. And this is why engineering is important, because you make it so where on top of windows and doorways, all you need is a small strip to cover the area rather than to have to fit a large sheet and cut around with a large sheet. It makes things very, very difficult. Okay, now I'm getting ready to put our sheet here that will go in between these two window frames. It's going to match the header and the bottom piece, these two pieces, two small pieces that I just finished doing. And with this in particular, you want to take your time because there's quite a bit of cutting around. It's an important sheet. And so, first thing to do is to try and get it in there, in between. Don't worry so much about trying to match it at the moment. Let's just try and get it in there and get it secure on the wall. Now we can try and fool around with it and get it to a more manageable form here. Okay, and that is following. I want to bring it up just a little bit. Follow our ceiling line there. And if you can get it matched and following your meeting, rather, butting to your panel, to your previous panel. Then you can just hold it with your hand very carefully, and you can start making your cuts. You want to cut this way. You want to cut down this way because the woodwork is here. And if you cut, for example, up this way, you would be cutting where the paper should really be. So plan your cuts well. Here, make a little cut, and you want to cut sort of across but going downward a little bit. And now I'm going to try this cut. Sometimes it helps to put your finger where the angle begins, and you can make a little cut there. And downward, as you can see, I'm cutting sort of down towards where the window is. It's very logical. All you have to do is just think before you cut, then make sure and you cut, and you got it. Same situation here. Good thing to remember is to cut, just get rid of your excess. You know you're not going to need all this stuff, so just get rid of it. Just put it back like that. Same thing here. Get rid of your excess. And before you know it, it starts to take shape. Okay, now I'm going to take down my short fold. And before I get rid of any excess, what I want to do is just bring it around a little bit, just to make sure that I'm not an inch away or more. Sometimes if window frame is a little out of level, it might throw your sheet off. So this is a good way of checking it. And as you can see, we're right on it. So now we know that we can cut and it won't be a problem. And I'm going to make my first cut right here. And I'm going to cut straight across the middle of this molding here. And this you can either do with a blade or do with scissors. I generally prefer to do it with a blade. Or you can take a pencil or the back of the blade and mark where you're going to cut if you're not exactly sure. This way you can see the mark. And I'm going to show you how you can do it with scissors part of the way. And then I'm going to show you how you can do it with a blade. So whichever way you're comfortable. So you can see, do it with scissors all the way down there, or you can do it with a blade. And either way, it works out. For these little round edges, you want to try and do it with a blade. Okay, now this is, right here is the corner of where the molding is. Now here I'm going to make 45-degree cut going up this way. I can't cut down this way because if I cut down, obviously I would be taking this piece, slashing this piece off. So let me show you very carefully how I'm going to do this. Just press it in there and feel your way. And think before you cut. You want this cut to go up this way. So you can bring the other part of it around. You feel the point, the corner with your finger, and put the blade right on that corner. You don't want to cut on the wood because you damage the wood, so you're going to just lift the paper a little bit. You've marked it where it is, and you're going to cut up. Now all you have to do is bring it around, and there you have it. And now you're going to cut your excess off. Now you're going to smooth out a little bit more. And your cuts can really look like this if you take your time and you just follow procedure. And there you have it.
When you get to a corner, you might be tempted to bend a full-width strip through the corner and continue papering along the adjacent wall. Stop a minute, though, and remember what we said earlier, that only rarely are corners perfectly vertical. This means your pattern will almost certainly be out of kilter on the new wall. Let's let Lee show us the right way to turn a corner. You'll need the same tools we've been using, plus a level and tape measure.
The first thing to do is to measure top, middle, and bottom. And the top is 8.5. Middle is 8 5/8. The bottom is also 8 5/8. So what I want to do here is add 1/8 of an inch to come around the corner just a tiny little bit, and the rest of that panel then will go over that little bit of going around the corner. So there's going to be about 1/8 of an inch of an overlap. And you want to measure 3 times, just like on the wall. Bottom, then the middle, 8 3, and then top. And you're going to cut on that straight line. Okay, and now I've cut my panel to 8 3/4, and we're going to fit it right in. And as you can see, we're coming around the corner about 1/8 of an inch in some places and about 1/4 of an inch in some places. So you get a nice tight fit and a little bit coming around the corner. And by the way, now this next panel will have to be leveled, and you can level it and push it in. You certainly have more options and more choices than if you were to wrap. You never wrap inside corners. Okay, so what I'm doing here now is that I am overlapping this onto that turn that I made with about 1/8 of an inch on this corner. So that this sheet goes in essence on top of that. But before I go any further, I want to make sure that this sheet is level now. So all the rest of my panels are going to be level. And let's see what the level reads. And sure enough, it's right on it. So that is what we want.
Now it's time to fit the last strip into place. As we said, this will occur at the kill point. At the final seam, the pattern is not going to match, which is why it has to be located in an area where it won't be noticed. Let's see how Lee handles this final strip.
Okay, now that we've reached the end of the room, this is what is called kill point, and usually you have it behind a door. However, in this room, there is no door. So essentially, you would have it in the most inconspicuous place that you can find. And here we go. As you can see, there's a little bit of excess here that I've left, and that I'm just going to cut off. Now, it's important that when you are cutting excess off, and you want to go around a little bit here on your kill point, you don't want to cut through the paper underneath, so just try and cut very lightly when you do cut. Another technique to use, if you are afraid of cutting the underneath section of the other sheet, is you can pull this a little bit while you're cutting. You're guiding your blade. You might want to try experimenting with that. Now I want to show you the switch blade, how to do that. You can either just put them back or you can cover them. You want to match the stripes and whatever design you may have. Then just hold it, pull back the plate while you have it creased and right stuck to the plate, and just take it back to the table. Now you want to get rid of the excess without moving the plate. Sometimes also what you can do is do it with a dry piece. Take a pencil and score or mark where the plate is. And this way you can just take the piece and paste it and then put it back on the plate, on the front of the plate. You can always readjust the piece again if you're not sure. And you can fold it back, make a couple little slices, release slices, on each end like this. And what I like to do is just put it on my table and sometimes put something heavy on top and let it dry, and then just take it up to the wall after it's dry and just install it. Put the screws right back, open the little holes for the screws later, or you can do it now. And there you have it.
Remember how drab our room looked at the beginning of this program? You've just seen the magic of wallpaper transform it into this warm, inviting space. We hope we've inspired you to work some of this same magic at your home. Master the techniques we've just presented, and before you know it, you'll be wallpapering like a pro.